Welcome to another week of Completion Critiques, where each episode we review a game's completion and achievement rates to see what we can learn about how it engaged with audiences and if there were any major pain points or stumbling blocks that turned people away. We're basing it on those metrics up there. If you'd like to suggest a game for a future show, please get in touch. And if you'd like to vote for future episodes, all Patreon supporters get voting rights. You'll find links to everything down below. But with that said, let's begin. So let's take a look here. So it lost 5% very quickly. I believe this is just in the tutorial. And 91% would be, well, that will be, if I remember right, that should be maybe 20 to 30 minutes in. Now, as we keep going down, I do like how 87.5% that we had churn before somebody even died, which I find that just very weird and hilarious. Now, as we keep going down, as you can see, though, we're getting some churn. We have the Memorial Mob, which is that one. I'm trying to remember who that is, because it doesn't seem like they're counting the Ogre, which was kind of one of the early mini-bosses as an achievement. And that guy was a very rude awakening for getting into this game. We go from 87 to 63. 63 to 60. Gyobu would be considered kind of the first official fight. You had to fight him, and then you had to go for that damn crazy war boar. Really? Did not think about it. Maybe we'll do a trading card show at some point. But as you can see, the game definitely has some churn. Now, if we keep going, I'm just doing this to check. Here's something that I find interesting. The game stabilized at the Phantom Lady Butterfly fight, which that battle was not really required. If you wanted to see everything, yes, you have to fight her. But Genichiro Ashina, he is the wall. That is the fight that, do or die, you either learn Sekiro or you're not playing this game. Like, that's it, you're done. So, if we are kind to Sekiro, we'll say that it's stabilized at, let's see, we'll go with when it just kind of became normal, and just to make sure we want to keep scrolling down. Yep. So it's stabilized at 47.7%, which will round that up to 48%. Now, when Genichiro occurs in the game, again, as a Souls-like, it's very hard to give an exact number as to, how long it would take you to get to that point. For some people, they probably could have done that in 45 minutes. For other people, probably a whole lot longer than that. I know it definitely took me more than 2 hours the first time I played it to get to that fight, much less cleared it. So that means that it's stabilized at 52%, which really, I was expecting that to be lower. I expected far more churn in Sekiro than this. And that has to do, I think, a lot with what this design meant. Sekiro was designed to be different compared to Dark Souls, Demon Souls, and the like. It was supposed to remove a lot of what people thought were, the complexity and the difficulty of a Dark Souls game. Specifically, the grinding, losing resources, and kind of the confusion of all the builds. Sekiro has no builds. There are no different weapons, there's no magic. At most, there are the different abilities or the different passives and moves you can unlock through the skill tree. But none of that really is required. or required in the same way as, well, just getting good at this game. And Sekiro's design, it's all built on kind of counterplay. If you can learn to counter the enemy, parry their attacks, and build up their stagger to get those instant kills, you can break this game very easily, like I did in my video. And I went from, dying dozens of times to very much as like coasting through the main game of Sekiro. And one of the reasons why I think the churn rate, the civilization rate is so high, is that it is very much a game that it's not as deep as I think you would assume it would be. Because it's only built on one major system, the parrying and being able to counter, you learn that you found the strat for every single boss in this game. So while Genshiro here is an incredibly tough fight, it's definitely one of the more spikier encounters in the game, it's not that bad. Because as we've talked about with previous Souls-likes and just Souls-like design, once you kind of make it past the churn and learn the ropes of it, the game doesn't really get that much harder. And we can see kind of how this plays out with how much it stabilizes. As we go from Genshiro to the Folding Screen Monkeys fight, which that Folding Screen Monkeys fight can be, I think, a little bit more annoying than Genshiro was, just because of having to stalk them through that one area. We again get to the Guardian Ape, and again, you can see that things are stabilizing. And when we say stabilize, we're meaning that you should not be losing more than, I would say, 6 to 7% per challenge. Mastery Arts, this is more of a completion one, so we're not really counting this. Now, this point I find very interesting. Great Shinobi Owl. I just want to double check this before I say it. Demon Hatred, okay. There we go. Because they don't give all the titles for this, so the Great Shinobi Owl, that is the first fight with your father, or your adopted father. It's a hard fight, but it's nowhere near as hard as the second optional fight. But still, when we're at this point, this is more or less, I think, 3/4 of the way through Sekiro. It's still at 38%. That is really solid. Corrupted Monk is another fight that really hammers in the point that, hey, did you learn how to parry and counter? No? Well, good luck beating this guy. Because this one takes very little damage, and it's just all about building up stagger. And the Guardian Ape, Shinobi, and Corrupted Monk, those are the 3 required fights, I believe, in order to unlock the final quarter of the game. And that final quarter takes you to that very beautiful garden where you have all the weird enemies trying to kill you, and then one guy just keeps kicking lightning bolts at you for some reason. So we keep going down. We fight the Gracious Gift of the Tears. I think that's the one that you have to beat the dragon to get those. Not sure what the Great Serpent was. I believe that is a optional challenge to kill that guy that's in the waterfalls. Now, Guardian Ape Immortality Severed, that is to use the additional... I think you have to fight him a second time in that bonus area. But here's the point that I want to kind of focus on. Sword Sage Ishin. This is the final battle of the game. And this is kind of... You would think that for this final fight, there would have been far more churn. But 31% managed to beat it. And that, for a Souls-like, to beat the final boss is incredibly high. And Ishin as a fight, it is very much just the final test of Sekiro. Much like, as we've said with other games, that a good final boss, or a good boss in general, should test the player's knowledge and skill of that game. If they're good at it, it should be a very easy fight. And Ishin is. It is a one that I believe is either a 4 or 5 cycle boss, because each time you take out one of his health bars, he changes cycles. But nothing Ishin does is unique or kind of different from the rest of the enemies. If you've learned the jump lightning counter that you get taught by fighting Ginchiro up here, that will also help out quite a bit. And if you're able to make it this far into Sekiro, nothing else is really going to surprise you. I think at most, the biggest jump would be fighting the Demon of Hatred, which that battle is definitely more of a Bloodborne or Dark Souls monster battle than anything else. Now we have different achievements for getting the different endings. And there are different endings based on what you're doing. Let's see, Sword Saint Ishin. There's that. Now I kind of wish they did give details about what these achievements were, because there are different endings based on what you do. So it's a little bit confusing. Shura, that is the quote-unquote bad ending of the game. Purification, I believe, is another one. Dragon's Homecoming, I think that is the good or the true ending. And it's kind of hard to tell, because with each achievement, a lot of people probably just played it once, got the ending, and then they quit. So we're going to go by completion at Sword Saint, because that is the final battle. And then from here, these achievements are the ones that are counting for the additional stuff, or be far more specific. I don't know what Man Without Equal is. That could have been the one that you play without game prosthetics, because it's not Sekiro. And 7.8% actually got everything in the game, which I am honestly surprised at how high that is. Now, if you're going for the game's true ending, you do have to beat the true owl fight. And I would say of all the humanoid encounters, that one is the most painful. He is incredibly fast, his pattern changes, and it's one of those fights where you really need to get good to get through it. And you can see that by how few people actually beat it. But still, 20% actually stuck through it and went for these different endings. I don't know what Ishin Ashina. I can't remember what achievement that was for. Oh wait, that could have been to learn that specific scroll or that specific power. But if we go by this, we have a clear rate of 32%. Which means if we take 32 divided by 52, we will get the core group. So that rounds out to 62%. So what does that tell us exactly, besides, as Shark says, that 32% were masochists in this game? For one thing, despite people complaining about this game, despite even me not really enjoying it as much as Dark Souls, it did retain far more people through it than I believe Dark Souls 3 and the other Dark Souls titles did. And a lot of that, I think, again, comes down to the different design. Most of the reviews that were talking about this said that if you came into this game with a Dark Souls background, you're probably going to enjoy this one less than if you came into it blind, because it pretty much tries to teach you its own way. And having that background does, despite not having a journalist, yeah, that's the interesting point. Far more people did beat this without difficulty setting, so Sekiro must be perfectly accessible, as we all know. But the difference in design, I think, helps, but there is one point I think you have to understand. Sekiro came from Software, and I believe that if somebody brand new, if an indie developer tried to do this exact gameplay with this exact style, I think far fewer people would have played it. And kind of the prestige and the name recognition factor of From Software probably motivated people to play this. And even though a lot of people probably hated this and didn't like the combat, I think the Get Good crowd still pushed through it in order to say, oh, I beat this game, I beat every From Software title. But the fact that it still had, if we look here, probably one of the lower churn rates. If you can stabilize at 52% or 50% of your fan base, that's kind of like right on the average of what we expect. We want it to be higher, but I was expecting this to be far lower, just again because of the difficulty. And what I think we can kind of count from this is that the Phantom Blade Butterfly fight, that again is, if you play this game, is 40 minutes, maybe an hour in. If you know what you're doing, you mean the weird masochist shark. That people, like the churn rate kind of stabilized definitely within the first 2 hours of playing it. And we could maybe say even within the first hour, the game kind of churned through everyone who wasn't going to get into this game. And the fact that at least almost 50% of the player base managed to clear essentially the biggest wall. Because Ginchiro basically stops you from starting the back half of the game. And we got a very high rate of this. Let's see here. Yeah? Dark Souls 3 is actually very low. I think it's the lowest of the 3 Dark Souls in terms of churn and completion. I think Dark Souls 2 is higher than that. And I wonder if part of that was either series fatigue at that point, or people just kind of gotten their fill of the game. Sekiro shadows the weird masochist. But all the pain points that I remember from Sekiro, the fights that really got annoying, people were not quitting. The Guardian 8 fight is a pain to fight going into a blind. But we go from 44 to 42. So it really, at that point, wasn't that big of a pain for a lot of people. We could maybe say the 31%, or the people who went for the super difficult ending here. What's kind of interesting is that I thought more people would go for this ending. The sure ending is the quicker ending, it's the bad ending. But you do have to fight an additional battle. And that lady can be very difficult to fight as well. And then we have Purification. I think Purification... No, wait. Dragon's Homecoming, I think this is the normal one. I think Purification is the quote-unquote true ending. Yes. At least 20 when you start, to restart that game. But Man Without Equal, I think I got that one. I definitely didn't get all the techniques. But 7.8% for 100%ing this game is really solid. Usually the super I 100% the game achievement is probably like 4% or less. So Sekiro, again, despite the difficulty, despite being, a brand new IP from Software, I would say it succeeded. If you can motivate, higher than 50% of your core base to see your game through, that means a lot of people who bought this game did get through it. Far higher than Dark Souls. And it does make me wonder if you know of, obviously they're working on, was it Elder Ring, the next kind of quote unquote, Souls-like from Software. I wonder if it's going to lean more towards Sekiro or lean more towards Dark Souls or Bloodborne. Because it still did really well among its group. And what we can learn, I think, from this, one, I think the tryhard factor is real. Because I cannot imagine a lot of people playing Sekiro if not for From Software's name. And it's something that we say a lot on our Sunday shows. Or, I'm sorry, on in the inquiries for Thursday. That name recognition really does matter. When you're the top dog, it lets you get away with things that a lot of other studios couldn't. And I would imagine, again, that all these rates would be far lower if somebody new was trying this. Even if it was the exact same gameplay, the exact same IP. Without the From Software name attached to it, I think people probably would have just said, this is what I have to do? Quit. But I do find it a little bit funny that 5%, they didn't even get to the sword. And the sword is literally just you learning how to move around and be sneaky. And again, this is why we can't count the people before the churn rate or before the civilization rate as part of your core fan base or part of the people who know and get into this game. Because how many people who stop playing within 4 minutes of Sekiro are going to come back for another title? Just be from Nintendo, and then you'll get everybody. Is the Memorial Mob the boar fight? I'm trying to remember. But essentially, we talk about the main route through Sekiro. Again, Family Butterfly is optional, but you do get, I believe, an important upgrade or resource for being that fight. But Ginshiro, Gyobu, and I believe the Memorial Mob, these are required fights. And again, Ginshiro is the first gate that you have to deal with. The Corrupted Monk, I believe, is the second gate. Although I may be confusing the order of these two. You definitely have to fight Great Shinobi Owl. But I forget at what point do you do that. And then we go to the Great Serpent. Great Serpent and Guardian Immortality Severed are bonuses. But you do have to fight the kind of giant dragon guy. That's this one right here. What's interesting to me, a lot of people 100%ed these things, which are completely optional, getting all the techniques, all the prosthetic tools, before they would fight Sword Saint Ishin. And then fully, I like how that was more important than fully upgrading your healing ability, which that would be very nice. You need to put a Fortnite in there too. Upgrade Vitality and Posture, Follower Surpassed. I forget the Great Colored Carp. That could be another optional fight as well. Ishin, Natural Prosthetics. Like, the most annoying fight in this game would probably be the Demon of Hatred, while the most challenging fight, or at least in terms of learning it, would be the second or the a peak Great Owl battle. So there really isn't a lot for me to say. Well, Epic is different from Fortnite, or at least a different branding. We should have a loot box in there too. But again, considering its difficulty, it's going to be very interesting when we switch over to the Surge next to look at what happens when you don't have that branding and that name recognition, and you try to do something a little bit differently with the formula, and how well did it resonate with people there. But again, it's always funny to me about how quickly people will churn out of the game. Because Return from the Dead using Resurrection, that is literally just die. That is all you need to get that achievement. So many people, or we kind of lost a lot of people in terms of this percentage rate before they would have even learned what the mechanics of Sekiro are. But still, again, the name factor and the very low kind of difference from the skill floor to the skill ceiling definitely motivated people and kept them invested. And again, I think the try hard, get good factor, the people who would dare not rage quit out of a From Software game, kept them through all the way to the end. And I do wonder how much of this 31% are kind of the new players, not the hardcore, but the core players who bought Sekiro and wanted to see it through to the end. So I'm pretty sure a lot of casual people ended up being churned out.